So while taking a look at our user interface, we briefly looked into that magnet icon in the bottom right-hand corner. So here I have the ability to turn on a few options here. Let's take a look at this in more detail. So I have an option to snap sketch to grid and to throw in auto constraints. So let's first take a look at snap sketch to grid. By default, I can see both of these options are turned off for me right now. So what snap sketch to grid does is while you're sketching, it will jump to specific grid points. And this can be very useful to help you sketch a lot more quickly and a lot more accurately. So for example, with this turned off, if I wanted to sketch out about 20 centimeters, I could just draw a quick line here from this point to about this point. But notice I'm not really snapping or jumping to any grid points. It's just more of a free-flowing line. Yeah. But see, if I want to get kind of dead on that end point, that would be 20 centimeters. But see, I can't really get there right now. I can get close and so on. But really, it's just a free-floating line. Notice now I'll just quickly jump in and turn on my snap sketch to grid and just try to do the same thing. Notice now as I'm drawing my line, it's jumping to each specific grid point. So it's jumping up by 1 centimeter at a time in this case because my grid is 1 centimeter. Okay. So it's very easy to draw more accurately, and I can get exactly on 20 centimeters fairly easily there. Again, this is just a personal preference. If you're drawing more natural, free-flowing shapes, maybe you don't want the snap to grid turned on. But if you're drawing more precise or accurate shapes and sketches, maybe snap to grid is very, very useful for you. Now, let's take a look at the auto constraint option. So first I'm going to show with auto constraint turned off. And so if I just draw something like a vertical line, it's fairly vertical, or it looks fairly vertical, but in fact it may not be exactly vertical. And I don't see that vertical constraint coming in. And I can do the same and maybe draw in a horizontal line. But again, not necessarily coming in exactly horizontal, and I don't see that horizontal constraint coming in. So what this means is if I were to move any of these points around, I can see in fact it is not constrained to be horizontal or vertical. If I were to do the exact same and just first turn on my auto constraint, as the name suggests, this will automatically throw in some constraints. So now I'll just do the same and try to draw a somewhat vertical line. And notice that the application has automatically figured out that you are trying to draw a vertical line here, so it's thrown in that vertical constraint. Just the same, I can try to draw a horizontal line. And now it's thrown in not only the vertical constraint, but also the perpendicular constraint. So it's automatically thrown in these constraints for us. And now, of course, if I were to move things around, it's staying both vertical and perpendicular. The auto constraint option is just a personal preference, and you can turn this on or off as you please, but it can be very, very useful in just speeding up your design and sketching process, as it's going to automatically throw in all of these constraints so you don't have to do it one by one every single time. Again, you may not necessarily always want auto constraints turned on because, say for example, you're drawing more natural free-flowing shapes again, or you just want a line that is fairly vertical but not exactly vertical. Auto constraint might throw in that exactly vertical constraint, and in fact that may not be what you were looking for in that case. So you can switch this on or off to suit your needs. Now that we've learned a little bit more about using the snapping and auto constraints to speed up our sketching and design process, in the next lesson we're going to look at creating an even more complex completed sketch.